Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of VR365. What is going on? I have a special guest today. Matteo311 is in the building. Matteo, how is it going? What's up?
What's going on? Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely, man. Dude, I really love your setup there. It looks dope. It kind of reminds me, I don't know if you ever really watched VR Roundtable much back when we did VR Roundtable, but
I did,
okay.
yeah.
Steve from VR Roundtable just moved into a new house, and it looks like his basement. It's basically his entire basement, and it looks very similar to that. And I was joking with Steve. I was like, dude, Steve, you can put a freaking bowling alley down there. You know how, like, there'll be these, like, millionaire houses where they have a little mini bowling alley on the
Yep.
side?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is my basement. It comes up frequently. Someone comments about it whenever I'm on a live show. And I had water damage down here. I was forced to redo the basement, so I built a proper man cave.
Yeah, it's a proper man cave to be sure. And also, Steve Bishop and myself and you all seem to be like home theater guys because I can see your theater seats in the background
Yep.
there. I see a projector up there.
Yep.
How long have you been doing that? Have you been like a projector guy for a while, or is it a new thing for you?
It started with the man cave.
Oh,
So like when I first moved into this house, so it's about 4 years now, I said, you know what? I have this space down here. Let me get a projector, set it up. Started with a very humble man cave down here, just like a projector, simple speakers, and I connected Xbox to it, whatever. And then when I redid this basement, I went all out. Like even my PC setup that's here, it's wired through the wall into this. This is actually a closet here with server equipment, which is all connected to the projector. So you have Xbox, PlayStation, my actual PC. So any type of content you want to play will go right out to the projector.
sweet. Does that projector do 4K?
4K, 60 frames per second.
Wow. Yeah. See, I got out of the projector game a while back, and so I never got to the 4K projectors. They had them when I was still into projectors. They had them, but they were like ridiculously expensive. And so, like, if you had a 1080p projector, you were doing pretty good. But I never like. It would be cool though to have 4K in a projector because, like, when you project something and you make it so ginormous, that's where that extra resolution really is mission critical.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the considerations was we're going to be doing VR down here, and we're going to have people watching. So people will sit on the couch, watch someone play VR. It'll show up on the screen. I didn't want a ginormous TV there because someone's going to punch it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was the thought process. That was one of the considerations.
Yeah, another thing I'm amazed too is like, so in preparation for this episode, I did check out a number of your most recent episodes just to kind of get a flavor for what you've been doing lately. And I'm looking at your room and everything, and I'm thinking, why does it sound so good? It seems like it would be very echoey, because you got this big open space. I don't see like carpet or anything. I don't see like acoustical treatments, but you don't sound echoey at all. Do you have like right there where you're sitting? Do you have like some echo stuff like above you?
This
Or?
this entire wall is acoustic dampening, padding, and all that. Because when I did come down here and removed carpet on the floor, because like I said, there was flood damage down here. I never want to deal with that again. A soaked carpet sucks. So when I put this floor, yeah, the echo was horrendous. But every corner of this room and the entire wall behind me has sound dampening pads.
Oh, sweet, yeah. Because it sounds very good, and I'm definitely impressed with your production quality on a lot of your videos. Very good. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get into the interview? But you know what? Why don't we do this before we get into like your past history and all of that? We'll definitely go into that. But I did want to talk about a show that you did very, very recently. Let me see if I can find the trailer here. Grabbed it. And that, of course, is the VR YouTuber Awards, the first ever. And, of course, you went ahead and handled it yourself. And, I got to tell you, I heard about this. You mentioned that I was, like, nominated for something. I was like, wow, that's amazing. But if I'm completely honest about it, I assumed that this would be kind of cheesy and, you know, low production quality and just kind of like a little bit cringeworthy and stuff like that. So I really wasn't expecting a lot from this. And then when I saw it and it started up, and just the way you're doing this intro with how did you do this? I mean, it looks very Academy Award-esque. I mean, you really did a great job.
So I mean, so you go back a couple months, I had the idea of it, and I said, okay, this is going to be a video that would take forever. If I'm going to do it, I want to do it right. I want to do this as a fun project. Like, if it bombs on YouTube, so be it. But like the reasoning to do it is I love this community. Everyone has been so kind and welcoming. I'm fairly new compared to many other people who've been doing this like yourself for years. So I'm fairly new. I'm not even a year and a half in. So just everyone's been so welcoming and awesome. So I wanted to do something special, just to say I appreciate this community, all the people in it, how nice they've been, and I just thought it would be fun. So you go back maybe 6 months, I had the idea, and I said, okay, I'll just do it in small increments. The intro, I said, well, I want to do something like this. I picked up After Effects and just slowly, you know, I grabbed a few free things out there, I tweaked them, I did some editing, and that's how the intro came about. And when I made the intro, I'm like, all right, this is gonna happen. You know, this is gonna happen. People said they would be on board when I poked people like BMF and Kaz and said, you know, would you guys be part of this? They said, everyone immediately said yes. I said, this is happening. So I just took my time. I took my time, did it piece by piece. There are definitely things I could have improved. Some areas I screwed up, but I was happy with how it came out.
Dude, yeah, you should be very happy with how it came out, because it is not, I mean, if there is a cringe factor, it is very minimal. And, you know, so there's not much of a cringe factor. Production value's awesome. I was impressed with the whole thing. I thought that you mentioned we were talking beforehand that you had some problems with like buffering and stuff during your premiere, and so that kind of obviously sucked.
Yeah.
But
YouTube killed me. Yeah, I mean, the premiere started, obviously, you know, it's pre-recorded footage, this isn't live, and it just buffered the whole way through. And I know because of that I had a decent amount of abandonment. People would come, start watching, be like, what's wrong with this video, and leave. Like, people even messaged me like, dude, your live stream's broke, and I'm like, it's not live. Something's wrong with YouTube.
Yeah.
So that hurt. I was really upset, and I think that kind of stopped the video from spreading, because it like went 1,000 views in 30 minutes and then just jumped off a cliff. So I was really upset, but I'm still getting feedback. You know, everyone who was part of it said they enjoyed it. I had fun. So even if it is a bomb in terms of views, it doesn't matter. I take it as a win. I enjoy it.
Yeah, I think it'll have some good staying power. Like, I think people will be like, I bet you a couple months from now, people will still be watching this thing, you know, that didn't hear about it for whatever reason and then found it. But yeah, I think it was a great job. And then also getting all the different clips of the various YouTubers that won the award. And then, you know, they're on a green screen backdrop, and, you know, they're doing their little acceptance speech and all of that. Absolutely.
It's like, it was like herding cats.
Yeah.
You know, getting all, and I feel bad. I know gamer tags in the chat. I feel bad because there was supposed to be like, if you see his clip, he's supposed to be holding an award.
Oh.
But he's not. So he just looks like he has this funny grip. But it just came down to the wire, and I just didn't have time. And I felt bad. And like, when people said, hey, what's up with your grip? I'm like, dude, the CGI budget ran out. We couldn't put a trophy in. But everyone was a good sport. Everything worked out.
You know, it's funny though. I've noticed that when you create something, you make some type of video or whatever thing that you're doing, right? And you know, there's like this like mistake that's there that is like just staring you in the face. But 80% of the people watching don't even notice the mistake, you know? So it's like like
the first clip, I'm not making eye contact with the camera, and it hurts me so much. Like, I look up a few times, and it's only the first clip, and it's like 20 seconds of me not making perfect eye contact, and I didn't have time to re-record and everything. It's not easy.
Yeah. What do you think about some people are gonna make this? Like, some people will attack something like this, and they'll be like, I can't believe these goddamn YouTubers, you know, navel gazers. They just love themselves. It's just a narcissistic festival, you know.
I mean, again, I don't think the videos for everyone. I feel like only people who are deep in the community have a love for the people who were featured or who are a part of the community would actually appreciate this. Everyone else on the outside might not appreciate it as much. They might say, "Oh, cool! I found new people to watch," which is also part of it. But like some of the jokes would go over your head. Like there's an appearance from Dickhead Robot, which is a character on Between Realities. So that would go over a bunch of people's heads. So there's stuff like that. But overall, like I said, if it is just for us and, people want to say, "Oh, we're full of ourselves," I don't care. It's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. That and what you mentioned there, we do have this like tight knit community in VR right now. We're always kind of crying about how VR isn't mainstream, but one of the good aspects of it not being mainstream is you do end up with a tighter
We're close knit.
community. Also, we don't have like a lot of horrible microtransactions and all these different things in our games. Like if
Yet.
so there's some benefits for being kind of smaller right now. And
Yeah.
another thing too is like a lot of the people that watch these various shows, like a lot of people that might be in my chat right now, a couple hours later they might be in a different show's chat. A lot of these people like they bounce from this show to that show, and for
Yep.
those type of people, this is like really awesome for them because they're into all these different YouTubers and they like the idea of doing this, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I can't tell you how many times I jump into a new Discord or someone's stream or whatever it may be, or just even in game. You run into people who know us, or happy to see us in someone else's stream or community or Discord. And you see that constantly. It's great. Like you said, it's close knit and everyone's very
Yeah,
positive.
everyone's very positive except Mr. Guac83 in chat right now, who says, "You old with no money, who makes VR vids for some money, but you get no views." No, actually, Mr. Guac, you're wrong. I don't get any money now. But yeah, no, it's funny. I bet you Mr. Guac83 probably saw my last video where I was saying that PlayStation VR is dead. Probably didn't like that. And just going back to that really quick, the PlayStation VR thing, I'm not going to get into it here because we're doing an interview, but I was like way overboard with that. It was an overreaction that I had, and I went off the deep end. There's no question about it. I still stand by some of my views in that. What I found out later, what I came to realize later, is that there's actually been 10 PlayStation VR games in the last 90 days instead of 7. When I was first looking at it, I thought, oh my God, only 7 games in the last in the last 90 days, the last 3 months, only 7 games. And so I was like, oh, this is a great topic to rage on. And so I went into it and then later found out there was a lot more. There's a few more games that came out that month, but it's neither here nor there. But yeah, these are the things that happen when you do YouTube stuff. All right, but let's go ahead and get into the actual interview here where we can talk about. I always like to go into the past history. If I don't know your past history, I kind of want to know like how you got into VR, but where I like to start is before VR even happened. So VR basically happened in 2016. So I like to go back to like 2014, 2015. And Matteo, I'm curious, have you always been a gamer? Or are you maybe like a lapsed gamer, or were you gaming hardcore in 2014, 2015? What platforms were you playing? Were you a PC guy? Were you a console guy? So if you could give me a little bit of flavor of what you were doing before VR.
So I've been PC VR gaming for like 30 years now. So obviously, as a young kid, I started probably, like 7 years old. Um, my dad was nice enough to notice that I had like a PC aptitude, got us a home PC, and then I just wanted to play games on it. You always want to have fun as a kid. Um, and yeah, so I've been PC gaming forever. That I've never fallen into like the let's be a fanboy PC master race. I do appreciate the extra hardware and the extra power that you get from a high-end PC. But at the same time, you have to stop and go, you have to appreciate what they accomplish on PlayStation and Xbox with optimization, and they, come out with really high-quality games. So I appreciate all games. But where my heart is has always been PC VR. I've always been a PC enthusiast. only, recently in the last few years have I been able to afford, the most high-end type of products. But, I've always been gunning for it and always been in that. So yeah, when it comes to PC gaming, that's where my heart is.
So like in 2014 and 2015, you were like playing various PC games basically for the most part.
Uh, Absolutely. Like some of my favorite games go back from like Half-Life, Mass Effect. Obviously, they're on
Yeah, yeah.
consoles now, but I played them all on PC. Original Call of Duty was a PC exclusive, which I loved. And so I was, just hardcore PC. I actually used to run a LAN room, like almost 20 years ago. So some people are like, what's a LAN room? I'm sure the chat's gonna be a little, but anyway, um, but yeah, so but back in 2014, 2015, I was playing, the most recent PC games, and just kind of following the news on VR because I was like extremely interested forever. Like I knew I was gonna get into it no matter what.
Yeah, did you so like in I can tell you the moment when I like really well, the moment when I knew I was going to get VR, it was in 2015. It was at I believe, the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. And we had known about Oculus. Like people had known about, the Oculus. But it was at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona we found out about the Vive and like Valve and like these lighthouses. And there were lots of journalists that were there, like Addie Robertson from The Verge and these different people. And they got demos of this thing from like that Valve and HTC were working on. They, no one knew about it at the time. And for me, the thing that was like the clincher was the fact that with these lighthouses, you essentially had like a volumetric cube that was like a little holodeck, basically. And so when you're in that little holodeck, it's filled with VRness. And that's what like super excited me. And then I ended up pre-ordering a Vive, and I got one in April. Was that similar to you? What was your very first VR headset, and when did you get it?
So that's extremely similar. I got the Vive. I did pre-order it, but I was moving right around that time, so I didn't get to set mine up until the end of May. I actually moved into this house, and it was literally the first thing I set up in this house. Before we moved furniture in, before we moved anything in, I came down here, I set up my computer and set up the VR. So there was like still construction going on in parts of the house, and I was like, well, let's set up the video games first because that's most important. But yes, my first headset was a Vive, and it was the same type of scenario. I was following Oculus. I was very interested. Then when Valve got involved, it's like your ears perk up. It's like, okay, tell me more. Yes, Valve's involved. I'm sold. And then like when I was, reviewing the technology, going to make a choice, the Vive just seemed like a more robust package. It had 360-degree tracking. It didn't have, the stands where you would have to be, stuck in 180 degrees. It just seemed overall the better product. And that's what I went with. And I was blown away, not gonna lie.
Yeah, do you remember back in the like a lot of people don't realize this, but in the very early days of VR, Oculus was like almost scared of room scale. Like they didn't want to do that, because people would talk about, well, why don't you have room scale? And they would be like, well, we think VR is better, and I think they were nervous about it just from like a liability standpoint maybe, but because room scale was such a huge thing on the Vive, they eventually had to cave in and go full room scale. And then also a lot of people don't remember the CV1 originally launched with an Xbox controller. So if you really wanted the true VR experience with motion controls, you had to get a Vive, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that was my sticking point. Like that's what sold me. It came with more technology. It had better options. And, that's what I started with.
Do you remember when you first got your Vive and you were like opening up the box and taking everything out, and like you take those controllers out of the box, and now those controllers to me seem so ancient and so ginormous and like not ergonomic at all. But the first day you had them, you thought this shit is like out of Star Trek or something. These are like
Yep.
space age
Yep.
freaking things.
This is the future. The future
Yeah.
right here. I hate those ones. Now, in retrospect, I hate them so much. They actually prevented me from playing free locomotion games for so long. And you know, Valve had that mantra for a long time, never move the player because of motion sickness. But eventually players wanted that, and we all adjusted. You know, the majority of people adjusted and don't get motion sickness eventually, at least eventually. You know, most people adjust. So they had that mantra, don't move the player, and they didn't have a thumbstick, and free locomotion made me feel weird using that trackpad. So yeah, it kind of held me back in that respect. So I hate those controllers on so many levels.
Yeah, do you remember too, like in the early days of VR, they would say, "Oh, you can never do a Call of Duty in VR. That'll just make people puke right away." Like they thought you could never do anything fast, like fast movement. Like, "Oh, that'll just make everybody puke." And people are playing all kinds of games where they're moving hella fast through it, and people adjust to it. Well, I mean, some people don't. It seems like with motion sickness, I kind of feel like a lot of people set themselves up for failure with motion sickness. Like, if somebody is really worried about motion sickness before they've ever even tried VR, it's almost guaranteed that they're going to feel discomfort and they're going to have some problems. And that other, I don't know, have you noticed that at all? Like almost like a placebo?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there is that. That is something that definitely happens in the real world. People set themselves up for disaster. I mean, this is multifaceted. Everyone's different. Your susceptibility changes. Like I've played countless hours of VR, and there's still some seated experiences that make me feel a little weird. But there's some people who have the mindset of, well, I'll just tough my way through it. You cannot tough your way through motion sickness. That is, you know, that's the opposite to train yourself to get better. The second you feel any discomfort, you need to back off and come back like an hour later. That's how your body will learn. If you try and force through it, you make things way worse. So, you know, also the software, they've learned so many little nuances to abate motion sickness. Like when you're playing Solaris, you know, you see the little lines when you're running fast. You don't realize how much impact that has at reducing motion sickness. It used to just be blinders, 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 which people hate. It's not that anymore. It's these little subtle things that you only really notice if you are watching someone else play and you're watching their screen. And you go, oh, you know, what's all this on the side of the screen? And when you're playing, you're like, oh, I don't really notice that. But it's these subtle things that are helping now, too. So it's improved on many levels.
Yeah. So back in 2016, you started off with a regular Vive, and that was probably your jam for a while. When At what point did you eventually move on to a different headset or add an additional headset to that lineup?
So I grabbed the Vive Pro because one of the biggest sticking points that bothered me with the original Vive was the clarity. You know, I'd get in game and I just feel like things don't feel real because nothing's very clear. So I felt that was like the biggest level of immersion breaking that I was experiencing. Again, the software was still very young and the quality of games wasn't great back then or as good as it is now. But so that was the biggest thing. So I picked up a Vive Pro, and that's kind of a love-hate on that headset. I never thought it was as clear, even though it has the same resolution as the Index. But I don't know what it was, the lenses that were used, whatever the case is. I thought it was an improvement, but not big enough. And also, for me, I had a heat level issue. I thought it was my headset. I spoke to the company. I returned it, which working with HTC is a nightmare. They sent me a new one, and it's just as hot. So I was never comfortable in my Vive Pro, and comfort's another big sticking point for me. So once anything else was announced after the Vive Pro, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm all over this. Whatever it is, I'm ready to jump.
Yeah. So did you ever like at a certain point did you decide to pick up an Oculus Rift at any particular point? Because like for me, I'll just say like I didn't have a Rift for quite some time, and then I don't remember what year it was when they had Summer of Rift. Do you remember that? And it was like like they had dropped the price to like
Yeah.
$399, maybe $399.99, and it was the Summer of Rift, and I was like, wow! Like everybody, like when that happened, people were really shocked that the price dropped that much. I remember I went to like Best Buy the next day and bought a Rift. Was it similar for you or?
So I was never considering buying a Rift, at least originally, because the technology was a sidestep. It was a lateral move. And I always wanted to move forward. If I'm going to make a purchase, these headsets aren't cheap. If I'm going to make a purchase, it has to come with some advantage. So the Rift didn't have any advantage.
What about the controllers, though, like the actual touch controllers? Because I felt... Well, go ahead.
You're right there. No, you're definitely right there. But I was unaware. I knew I wanted a thumbstick, but I wasn't aware of what a difference it would make. But I still held out. And then, in all honesty, I probably wasn't very interested in the Quest either. I'm like, oh, it's mobile gaming. Mobile games are just not going to be that good. And they did a great job with the Quest. But I'll be completely honest, Eric for president sold me on the Quest. He would not shut up about the Quest. He went on and on and on. And I'm like, all right, I got to get one of these things. And that's when I noticed, okay, these controllers are just so much better.
Yeah, because the controllers, like the one thing that Oculus really nailed, in fact, I have my old, these are the Touch One. I still have a CV1 that I use from time to time because of the Rift S just never really worked for me because of my IPD. It was like the field of view was just like totally eliminated pretty much. And so, but I still use a CV1, and like these original touch controllers, it's like they were personally designed for my hands. It was like they almost like they measured my hands and they just like wrapped the controller around it. It's like my hands just like mold into them. I say that, these controllers just melt in your hands like an M&M or something. I mean, it's just awesome. But yeah, that was a big factor. What about this though? So when in your early days, when you have a Vive and then you got a Vive Pro and you're playing all these various VR games, a lot of them probably on Steam, but still at this same time, you have stuff like Robo Recall, stuff like Super Hot, that originally it was only available on like Oculus. And so you could, of course, play that on your Vive. You could play that on your Vive Pro, but you'd have to use Revive, and then the controllers are different. So were you buying games, like did you get Robo Recall? Were you playing stuff like that?
So I did get Robo Recall, and I love Robo Recall. But if you remember, it was a teleport game. So it did, and then it was very easy to control with the thumb pad and teleport and actually spin and teleport. So control-wise, that didn't really hinder me. So I did occasionally get some Oculus exclusives. Occasionally, not that much. Again, if you remember back then, games were a little sparse.
Yeah.
So I'd be staking out games, and I'd get one here and there. But yeah, I didn't run into too many control scheme issues. In those early stages.
Did you ever think, like just from the Revive standpoint, that it would almost be better just to like bite the bullet and have an Oculus headset just somewhere, mainly for these very specific Oculus games?
So that's when I got my Rift S. So there were a couple new games releasing that I'm trying to remember which one in particular was like, all right, I'll get it just to have it for this scenario when Revive didn't work. Because there were some new releases that just were not compatible with Revive, which is rare, but it happened. It's driving me nuts that I can't remember the title right now, but we'll see if it comes to me. But I had a spare machine which had decent hardware, and I said, I'll plug a Rift S onto that. And whenever I want to experience these games that will not work on my main setup, I'll use the Rift S. And I felt like it's a very adequate piece of hardware. Like it gets the job done. But that obviously, I was happy to get it because I'm learning more about VR. I said, oh, I do enjoy these controllers, and you get to experience things like, the Halo strap, or what a software-only IPD feels like. And then you're using so many different panels. So the overall experience, just adds to your knowledge. So I was happy to get it, but I would say I don't use it very often.
Yeah. Well, I had something I was going to say. In Revive, like that's the thing. So Revive is compatible with a lot of games. It actually has really good compatibility. I mean, every once in a while there is a game here or there that, just doesn't want to play nice with it. But also there will be games that are compatible, but there's something about the controller or where a button is or whatever, where even though it's compatible, it's not the right way to play the game. And one of them that I really remember was the Mage's Tale. I don't know if you remember when the Mage's Tale came out on Oculus. It was in Exile Entertainment. And like when that game first came out, like, people don't realize in the early days of VR, it was slow. We didn't have AAA stuff. We didn't have characters that were like voiced and like there wasn't like it was very amateur hour for a lot of stuff in the early days. And like when Mage's Tale came out, there were like voiced characters. It lasted a long time. There were special effects and all this stuff. It was a pretty high production value type game. That I think that's one of the reasons people are excited by, what is it, Frostpoint Proving Grounds or whatever. There's another in Exile game that's coming out.
Yep.
But that game on Revive was kind of awful. If you were using Vive controllers, it was just pretty freaking awful. And I remember on Summer of Rift, when I finally got my Rift, and then I played the Mage's Tale on the actual Rift, it was like I got let out of jail. It was, and same thing with Robo Recall. Like I remember playing when I first got my Rift, and I was playing Robo Recall, I was like, whoa, this game is way better than I thought it was, because, you know, I'm grabbing the robots, slamming them together, and everything just seems so much easier.
Yeah, I mean, until you experience it, you don't really know. I mean, that's VR in general. You don't really know until you experience it. But so Stormland was the title that made me jump ship and get a Rift S, because it didn't have Revive support. And then when it eventually did, it didn't work right, and it didn't have multiplayer support. That was another issue that I did experience. I remember I ended up returning Marvel Powers United. I think that's the name of the title, because the multiplayer didn't work with Revive. It just kept kicking me offline. So I returned that game. So that was one game that, you know, I was like, but I'm not going to go out and get an Oculus product for this game.
Yeah.
But I mean, for the most part, I still play almost everything on my Index using Revive.
Really interesting.
I mean, almost everything that's Oculus exclusive.
Yeah. So, well, we can go ahead and get into the Index right now, because I did listen to some of your more recent episodes, and there was one episode where you were talking about the Valve Index, kind of saying like, you know, this is the elite headset right now at the moment, and the way you're talking about it, you know, it's your daily driver. It seems like, you know, this is the headset that you grab. This is your primary headset. I'm guessing you probably spend most of your time with either a Valve Index or maybe a Quest if you're trying like some Quest games, and and that's a common theme. Where was I going to go with this? But well, when it comes to the Valve Index, like I like the Valve Index a lot, but I don't know. I feel like it's kind of overrated in a lot of ways, but I mean, I guess it depends on, well, actually, let's talk about this. When it comes to VR headsets, they're so freaking personal, because everybody will say like, oh, the Samsung Odyssey does this, or this headset does that. And you really can't go off other people's opinions. You actually have to get these things in your house. You have to own them, and you have to use them for a couple of weeks, really. Like, I don't even think you can get a headset and in one day know what the headset is all about. Like, you need time with it. And everybody's like facial shapes, like the way their eyes and cheekbones and all of that. Have you noticed that like somebody will rave about a certain headset, you'll get it and it doesn't really work for you, or maybe the strength or weakness is like completely opposite for you?
So this is one, absolutely, yes. And this is something I just started doing, some live streams, doing like Q&As, because my community wanted them. And I feel like there's always so much more to be said that you can't really do in a 10-minute video, even if you have the best writing, you're super concise. But I always preface a lot of things with the fact that this is subjective. Like, you know, someone will say, oh, I prefer the Quest 1 because of the OLED panel, the new black levels on the Quest 2 or the Index are so terrible it breaks my immersion. And, you know, I like to say, well, that's subjective. Yes, you can say there is an objective quality to the OLEDs being better. Yes, the black levels are. But subjective, because color is an interpretation. It happens in your head. If you go back a few years, you remember that whole what color is the dress scenario.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So you see how we see colors differently. So for me, the color level on the Index has never bothered me. And it doesn't bother me on the Quest 2, but if that was a sticking point for someone else, I could see, because like I always say, the Vive Pro was way too hot for me. 45 minutes, I had to take it off. I felt like I had a fever. It would just burn my head. And it could be, like you said, the shape of my head, the way it sits on my head, whatever the scenario, it was super uncomfortable for me. And that's like the first reason why I prefer the Index over anything else. It is, to me, the most comfortable headset I've ever used, and I've owned 9 now, and it is just easily the one I can keep on my head for multiple hours with no discomfort.
But PlayStation VR, man, it's a pillow on your head. That's what I always say. No, the Valve Index is very comfortable. It is, it's actually a very heavy headset. Like if you figure out the entire weight of it, but it's balanced so well. Yeah, it is tremendously comfortable. The number one issue that I have with the Valve Index, and it's a broken record for me. Anybody that has ever watched my show knows what I complain about when it comes to the Valve Index. And for me, what it is, it's glare. And I heard you, like in a recent episode, you were talking about God rays and you were talking about glare. And I wanted to like reach out to you right when you were talking about it, because one of the things that you mentioned with the Index, I think you were like comparing the Index to the Quest 2, and you were saying on the Index, like a lot of it is at the bottom, and then on the Quest 2, it's like coming from the middle. And I can tell you what that is exactly. Okay, so see, the thing is, there's God rays and there's glare, and I believe they're two completely different issues. They're very closely related. They're like cousins, but they're not the same thing. And so glare, like for me on the Valve Index, the glare, it like swirls around. It'll swirl around the bottom, and sometimes it even swirls around to the top. You just don't see it on the top very much. It's much more noticeable on the bottom. And God rays for me is like your classic tied end credits, and it's like white end credits on a black background, and it's like the Superman effect, right? Where the Superman. And so they're two different things. And what's interesting about that is some people are incredibly susceptible to God rays, but they're not that susceptible to glare. Other people are very susceptible to glare, but God rays don't bother them very much. For example, on VR Roundtable, Gary, Reckoner VR, God rays were like a thorn in his side. Like he really, like he would use the Oculus CV1, but like he used it under duress, basically, because the God rays were a problem, right? And for me, it's like I don't even notice like I'll see the God rays on a title on the end credits, but I wouldn't notice it otherwise. But when I get the Valve Index, I'm like, God damn, this glare is a nightmare. What is going on here? And so So go ahead.
Yeah, so I always kind of slam glare and God rays together, only because the only time I ever experience them is usually together. It's usually only that, white credits, black background, a loading screen scenario, and I'm like, oh my God, you see all this light coming off the letters in this God ray fashion, and then you also see like it's almost like the light collects at the bottom of the lens. And it's the only time I ever see it. When I'm in a game, I don't ever go, oh, the glare just annoyed me. I don't know if it's the game captivating me or whatever the case is, but when I'm in game, I almost never see the active God rays or glare. Even in dark scenes or whatever the case may be. Quest 2, same scenario. I don't really actively see glare, or I don't really see God rays at all, but I don't actively see glare except for when I'm in loading screens. But like I said, I see them here rather than down here. And you are right on the Index. Sometimes they will wrap all the way around, just less prominent on top. But they're here on the Index and feel like here on the Quest 2. And I feel like this is more annoying because this is like right in my eye compared to this is something under my eye. But again, they never bother me. Like even if you go all the way back to the original headsets, I've only been like, oh yeah, look, there's glare, there's God rays. Okay, loading screen's over, we're good now.
Yeah. Well, take a game like Half-Life Alyx, okay? So Half-Life Alyx has dark scenes, light scenes, has bright stuff on dark backgrounds, has shadows and light coming in from all different directions, and there's virtually no glare in Half-Life
Yeah.
Alyx. And so what it is clever programming, and like Valve themselves, like they know what the Achilles heel is of like anybody that manufactures something. It's just like when we make a video, we know all our biggest mistakes in the video. They
Yep.
know what their Achilles heel is. And the developers at Valve, when they made Half-Life Alyx, like I don't know exactly what they did, but it would be nice if they could like release a special training video to all the other developers in the world, so that they could manage glare. But what I've noticed is there's a different games on the Valve Index, you'll see no glare whatsoever. For example, a game like Jet Island, if you play Jet Island on your Valve Index, which looks absolutely drop dead gorgeous, there's also certain games on the Valve Index that just sing on that headset. You know, Audica just looks gorgeous on that headset, especially because you got that extra vertical field of view, which Audica really takes advantage of in a nice way. But yeah, there's dark games like Audica. I don't notice much glare on Audica. It's primarily a dark game that has bright things on darker backgrounds, and I don't notice glare there either. So I think there's ways around it. The problem is we've got a lot of developers that they don't have time to worry about all these things. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to get their game on like 4 different platforms. And have you also noticed this? So the Valve is the Index is your daily driver, right? And have you noticed though, because this has bothered me, there's a lot of games that I'll play on my Index, and like the developers never bothered to try Index controllers with the game. They never bothered to like what is going on here? Don't they know that a lot of people have a Valve Index?
Yeah. And I mean, so, you know, for a long time, the Valve Index, oh, well, that's just the enthusiasts, and that's only like the 1%, and we don't have to worry about that if we care about game sales. But that's not really the case. The Valve Index became quite popular. Obviously, it's not up there competing with Facebook headsets in terms of how much of the market share it has, but it's done pretty well over time, and you can see it's been sold out forever, or it's been delayed forever. But just jumping back to what you said real quick about Half-Life Alyx, I said the same thing when I was live streaming it. I said, you know, I was walking through shadows in an area that was really dark, and I said, this is a testament to Valve. Everyone complains about the black levels on the Valve Index. This looks like real darkness. This looks like real shadows. So whatever they're doing, you know, they know how to make this headset shine, and that's exactly what you said. And then other games, like I played Defector with Revive, and the black level in one level specifically, is horrendous. But there's a little trick for the Index I recommend you try. It sounds counterintuitive, but turn the brightness up in settings. Turn it up to like 120%. What ends up happening is your brain gets used to the higher brightness level, and it starts making different interpretations of what's a shadow and what's not, and what is black. You're expecting you're just going to see bold grays from now on because you turned up the brightness level, but your brain is going to adapt, and they're going to start. It actually looks better. Try it. If you don't
Yeah,
believe
well, I agree with you. Like you've mentioned the black levels and also like color pop. You know, that's the other thing people talk about. It's like the colors aren't vivid, man. They don't pop. And I kind of feel like there's a lot of VR enthusiasts that kind of like to have almost like this like, yeah, but the colors don't, you know, like they like to have a zinger, you know what I mean? And so it's like, oh yeah, you really like your Valve Index, but the problem with the Valve Index, of course, is the colors aren't vivid, you know? Like they want to have this little thing that they can say where it's like, ah, you got me on that one, the colors aren't vivid. But what I've noticed with like Valve Index and like Quest 2, and I think you were speaking to this as well in some of your recent videos, is I think they're plenty vivid. I don't see the colors being like washed out and muted. And I feel like the black levels are pretty freaking decent. Like I thought they would be even worse. And so I think these aren't your grandfather's LCD screens is what I'm trying to say basically. You know what I mean? LCD is improved.
Yeah. I mean, I try and hang out in the gray area on discussions. Like I say, like, listen, this is my opinion. This is how I feel. But some people may say the black levels stink. And some people may say, well, I prefer 120 hertz, and that's why it's the better experience. when people just stay on one sticking point, it could be a factor that really does push them off. But a lot of times, like you said, people just need their anti-Valve or anti-Facebook statement. Like, well, what about Facebook accounts? Like, you're moving towards fanboyism, I feel. But yeah, I do point out when something bothers me on a headset, when I don't like something. You brought up index support, which is frustrating. I feel like, because I've spoken to many developers, and I'm like, well, what's it take, man, to get, hand tracking going? And they're like, oh, well, it wasn't that long. Once you do it once, it's super easy in the future. But they're like, hey, Valve makes it decently easy. The SDK's there. Okay. But like 2 games launched without index support, and I kind of scratched my head, and and then they never ended up covering them because of this. One was Doctor Who, and mind you, the index was much less popular back then. And the most recent one was Jupiter Grad. And I launched the game and I said, hey guys, what's going on? Game's not working. Oh, we don't support index. I'm like, but it won't even show up. Like, just what's going on? What's wrong here? Like, Doctor Who had something weird with the controllers that you would just like randomly like just keep turning with the index controllers. So if you had different controllers, you can actually work around this. But when it came to a Jupiter Grad, it just never showed up. And then I guess enough people like gave them crap, and then like 2 weeks later they did index support. But it's just like, I understand small developers don't have the money to have $1,000 headset just hanging around to just go, does it work? Okay, it's cool, it works. But I think we're at the point where you got to make it happen.
Yeah, I think if you're a developer, like, dude, to cut out the entire Valve Index from possibility of getting sales from those people, like when the Valve Index first launched and when people heard about it, and it was all the rage, man, and like all the hardcore VR enthusiasts, they all bought it, and they're still buying it. And if you want a high-end VR, you want a Valve Index. Like most, well, of course, G2, the HP G2 is starting to like take a little bit of that as well now. But yeah, I'm amazed at these developers that are like, nah, we just didn't have time for it. It's like, but the VR market is such a little niche as it is. It's like, can you really afford to do that? I mean, you're saying, yeah, it's $1,000 headset, but like find somebody in your, like pay somebody $100 to borrow one for a week just to test it.
I mean, even just like, load up, put in the plugins, the SDK, do it, in theory that you think it works, and then grab someone from the community. Know how many kids out there or potential VR streamers or gamers would be, oh, you want me to test this on my index? Absolutely. Okay, maybe it's a headache to, you want to write up an NDA or something like that. But I mean, even that's a viable solution, to send a little package out to someone and see if it works. That's because I just feel like, I don't know, maybe this is an elitist attitude, and I'm an index owner and I prefer the index, and that's why I'm like, yeah, you should just get it. But then you see these other like really small developers, like you really got to pat the developer for Vertigo Remastered, or just the original Vertigo. You got to pat him on the back because he's just amazing, and he goes above and beyond with everything. And that, his Vertigo 2 demo came out a long time ago and supported full finger index tracking. You have full games releasing, that didn't have this and didn't support the index. And here's his demo that just absolutely blows you away. And you're like, well, he went above and beyond. But again, I don't know, time constraints. Some people, their purse strings are held by someone else. So I'm not going to really fault anybody. Originally, I would fault people a bit more. I understand it a little bit.
Yeah, one other complaint I have with the Valve Index, like my number one complaint is glare, and then number 2 is the controllers. Like some people like really love Valve Index controllers. I don't know. I thought the idea, like the concept of the Valve Index controllers makes a ton of sense in terms of this idea of like being able to grab things and letting your hand go. I think that initial idea was like that $1 million idea or whatever that they had with the Valve Index, and it became, I don't know what's going on with my video. My video's tweaking out. But I'll just, hopefully my audio is coming through okay. But if somebody in chat can let me know if the audio is all right, I'll disregard the video. But this idea of like grabbing an object and letting go, like that's really cool, I think, on paper. And then I think when they created the controllers and everything, like that was kind of cool in the beginning, but it's like the plastics of it. And maybe because one of my Valve Index controllers, like one of the thumbsticks is bad, I need to send it back to Valve, and I've just been like super lazy about doing that. And now I'm going to have to pay like crazy money to get it done. But I've used Oculus controllers for so long, like the Oculus Touch, and then with the Quest, the new Touch, and Quest 2, this even newer Touch, and they just melt in my hand so perfectly. And the Valve Index controllers, I don't know, they just never did anything for me. But I guess they're pretty decent for you.
I'm slightly mixed on this. I really do like the natural sensation of the index controllers. It was, took a little while to get used to because you've been so, used to this fake grip button to grip things in VR that when you start doing it naturally, open your hand, close your hand, it feels a bit weird. But I do really like that. I feel like full finger tracking isn't really necessary. It's cool, and when you're in a video game and you see it happen, it does increase the immersion, which has a big impact in VR. But how many games, how many VR games do you need all fingers? Like, even if you're doing, like something like Onward, where you want to do something like this, and, I mean, even that I think is more than needed, and usually those games let you kind of jam your hands into certain postures. So the full finger tracking is, I don't want to call it a gimmick.
Oh, it is. It's a gimmick.
Really
it's
cool.
A gimmick, I think.
It's borderline gimmicky, but I do like the natural sensation of grabbing stuff, throwing. I think it feels natural. Thumbstick was a major issue with them. I replaced both of mine, but Valve replaced them, no issue. Asked like 5 questions, sent me controllers before I even sent mine back. So, and some people are like, oh, you got the YouTuber treatment. Valve doesn't know who the hell I am. They don't know who the hell I am. They didn't ask any questions. I'm sure they looked into me. No, come on. So they sent them right away. So support was really good with Valve, and they replaced my controllers. And since then, it's probably been another couple 100 hours of playtime. The controllers are holding up just fine.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but well, the thing is also is like when you're using your Valve Index, you're supposed to kind of have your hands free, right? So your hands are out there. So when you grab something, then you grab something. But for me, that feels like strange. I don't know. It just feels odd. Like I just want to grab the controller right away. And then
well, yeah,
you're in a game.
Yeah, coming primarily. Sorry to cut you off, but I was gonna say coming primarily from wands. Because that was previously what I used. I would always have like the death grip on the wand, and it was so hard to break that. Like, you get into a game using index controllers, your hand's always like this. So you're trying to pick up a gun, like just trying to press the grip button to pick it up, and your hand's like this. So yeah, it felt awkward, but I guess, like everything else, you adjust.
Yeah. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Okay, here's something I'm deathly afraid of. I don't know if you've seen any of these like patents that Sony had for like a new VR controller where they're kind of like copying the Valve Index controller and like with the fingers and all of that. And I'm like, oh my God, Sony, please, for the love of God, don't tell me that you're really going down this road. Because when we look at the Quest, the Quest 1 and the Quest 2 and the finger tracking that they have. Now, what I want for the future is I want a combination of finger tracking and controller. See, the Quest 2, I don't know if the Quest 2 could do this, maybe with the XR2, but I know Quest 1 couldn't do this. Quest 1 could not track your fingers and do controller tracking at the same time, which that would be really cool. I mean, I know you probably think, well, why would you ever really use that? But like if you're holding a gun with one controller and you got your hands and you're like making selections or moving sliders or something on your physical gun, so it's like if it's tracking both your hands and the controllers, that would be hella sweet. I like that, and I think that's going to be kind of the future. But I don't like this like fake finger tracking thing that like all the different finger tracking demos I've ever seen, they work sometimes and then they don't work sometimes. Like it's like I'm moving my fingers and it's like 2 seconds later my finger is moving, and it's like then this is broken. This isn't ready for prime time.
So, I mean, one of the things you have to say about Valve is they kind of like make enthusiast level products and don't inform them about you. Like, you don't turn on your index like you do at your Quest, and it's like, hi, welcome. This is how you draw your Guardian. This is how, like, I had my index for 6 months and I was still learning features, like the little button under here that you can use to control the menu. Like, they don't kind of like show you these things, and unless you're really poking around and not, you're not just jumping at the game, you don't see them. So like the index controllers at first, I'm like, these things don't track that well. But you go looking online and you just do this. Like they tell you how to put the controller on, put your thumb on the thumb pad, take a normal grip, then pull the elastic band. That's when it feels right. And then once it's on, you do this a few times, and tracking works. And I'm like, oh my god, it's like a miracle. Now it works. And even like when I wear my ring, I'll notice my ring puts different pressure. This finger never goes down in the VR game. So I take off my ring and it tracks perfectly. So I'm like, all right, these are actually accurate. Maybe, that's subjective. People have different hands. Mine are fairly small. So maybe if you have giant hands, it doesn't feel right. I know people have the extra, like you can buy the 3D printed extended grip for people who have hands that are too big. But I mean, I wouldn't, I think the technology's there for finger tracking. I just don't think it's necessary. I'm less concerned with PlayStation going down the finger tracking route, that I just want to make sure the layout stays similar. Thumbstick, A, B, menu button. Because then games out of the box will be supported everywhere. That's what I'm more concerned about. You could give me an extra button somewhere, cool. You want to do something special, fine. But thumbstick, A, B, let's stick with that. Then you could do whatever other bells and whistles you want.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, I just apologize for what's going on. I don't know. This is the very first time I've never had this weird thing going on with like my camera.
Have you met me? I am a walking EMP
Yeah.
field. I break everything all the way over to California. I can break stuff now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with my camera. I mean, my video. Like, I've never seen this weird, like, because it's showing my, like, in OBS, it's showing a perfect connection, and in YouTube Studio it says excellent connection. You know what I did though? I forgot to turn on autofocus on my camera before we started this video, and as the video was going, I went into the camera settings and turned off autofocus. And I that's the only thing I can think of that might have screwed with my camera or something. Doing that while the video was actually live, maybe. But anyway, we'll just try to make the best of it. So here's what I wanted to talk to you, because we're kind of running out of time here. We don't got much more time. But I wanted to just talk with you about like the whole Quest thing, because the way you've laid it out, you kind of seem to be more of a PCVR guy. Like that was your thing. You're a PCVR guy. You've always kind of been this PCVR guy. Then the Quest comes May 21st last year. We get the Quest 1. And it was like the greatest sensation in VR, right? Everybody was into Quest and Quest this and Quest that, and like the gaming industry, the VR gaming industry, like got a lot of new people aboard. When that first happened, when the Quest first arrived, because you said that like Eric for President kind of talked you into finally going down the Quest route. So I'm guessing like when the Quest first arrived, maybe you were like almost like, get that crap out of here. What did you think about the Quest like when it first launched?
So my initial reaction was, because I was, really wasn't involved in YouTube, or at least barely involved in YouTube at that time. My personal initial opinion was formed on my usage. So I said, well, what do I need a Quest for? I don't go anywhere. I don't, I'm not going to travel, with a VR headset, because I'm not going anywhere. The quality of games is going to be lower. I have a high-end machine. This is going to be a mobile platform. Then looking at the games lineup, I'm like, oh, these are games I own. So I'm going to rebuy games that I already own and play them at lower quality. I mean, obviously I was intrigued about Vader Immortal. So I was like, oh, okay. But I'm like, well, that'll eventually come to Rift, and then I could try Revive on it, which I did. I played it on both. So like I wasn't sold. But then when you look at it from the impact on the overall community, you're going to introduce a million new people to VR. It makes VR affordable to the masses. I'm like, well, I want to see how good it is so I can talk about it. And I'm just, I got to try it. I have to. If I'm going to be in this industry, I have to try it. And then actually Eric did a podcast, like he's done like two ever. Eric did a podcast and I was on, and he was like questioning me. He's like, so did it sell you? Do you think it's a viable product? And I'm like, to be honest, because he mentioned like how good Red Matter looks. And I'm like, to be honest, yes, it's a great, it's a viable product. It's a great option for people who want to get into VR. For me, it's like for the reasons I just described, it's not ideal for me. I don't travel, and even the untetheredness or the wireless nature of it that people love to say, well, you don't have a cable, isn't that so much better? I went from a wireless Vive Pro to my Index, and I think the wireless worked amazingly well on the Vive products. However, I was so ready to go back to the cable because I found the Index that much more comfortable, and just the clarity for me, for whatever reason, is night and day between the Vive Pro. Maybe it's the OLED panel versus the LCD, the sub-pixel array, whatever it is. But I find the clarity on the Index 100 times better than the Vive Pro. Maybe the IPD never went in the right spot for me. Whatever the case is, the Index was a home run for me and blew me away. And I said, you know what? Screw it. I don't need the wireless. A lot of games I will snap turn, and I snap turn like crazy. And I stay pretty, still. When there's games like Swords of Gura that are, melee games and you're sword fighting, yeah, you'll turn around a lot. And then sometimes the cable can be annoying. You see I have a pulley system. But again, like that, the wirelessness wasn't enough. I feel like, okay, I'm gaining wirelessness, but I'm losing out too much. I'm replaying the same games at lower quality. That's how I felt overall on the Quest. But I'd say right now my gaming is 90% Index, 10% Quest.
Interesting. Yeah. So what about the complaint? Like, I mean, you kind of addressed a lot of this when you were doing that breakdown there, but like the friction, everybody talks about friction because like you walk into your VR room and you see your VR headset down there and you're thinking, do I really want to put this on and get the cord? And I mean, you got the pulley system. People have said different things though. It's like you get the pulley system, but then if you have a game where you're like reaching up and climbing up a ladder, you might get your hand caught in the cord or something. And so sometimes people worry about that. So the friction, like, do you think friction is kind of overrated? Like this complaint about friction with PCVR headsets?
It's definitely not overrated. Accessibility is a huge factor in playtime. Like if something's going to slow you down, if you had to set something up every time to play, that's going to stop people from playing on multiple different levels. Like it might be, okay, it stops people sometimes or stops people 50% of the time. So that ease of entry, just like, Xbox, they made the feature where you press this, your Xbox turns on from here. That's so people who are lazy don't want to get up and actually turn on the Xbox. Those little things make a huge difference to people. And anything that gets you into game quicker helps. And I noticed that when I had my Vive Pro, my wireless Vive Pro, when I first got my Quest, I would walk by the Quest, just pick it up and put it on and start playing. And the Vive, it's like, oh, is my PC on? Okay, I got to plug in the power because it's wireless. I have to turn on the battery. I have to turn on the wireless software.
You might have a problem with the sound or something,
Yeah, the Vive always had freaking issues. It never adjusted to the right audio and stuff like that. And sometimes you just don't, the only free time I have is at night and I'm tired and you don't want work.
Yeah.
So I get that. So the friction is definitely a big deal. Now, I have things, fairly simple. My setup, my Index is always plugged in. It's right next to me. I literally just grab it, grab the controllers, turn it on, and I'm good to go. It's pretty frictionless. If I'm going to be gaming, I'm going to be gaming down here anyway. So for me, I've made it frictionless, but for some people, like my base stations are wired through the wall. So like this one here, they're wired through the wall. They never move. It's not like they'll be moved out of place and I have to readjust my Guardian or anything like that. So my Chaperone. So I've made it frictionless, but I know some people don't have that option. So yeah, frictionless is a big deal.
Yeah, it's weird because I come in here and usually my Quest 2 is over there and I'll look at my PCVR stuff and then I'll look at the Quest 2 and I'll be like, oh, it's just so easy just to grab that. Because like you grab a Quest 2, you turn it on and bam, like 2 minutes later you're in a game and it's just operating. But you did make the complaint basically that like the libraries are basically the same. And when Vader Immortal first came out, I was actually this crazy nut job that was arguing that Vader Immortal should be exclusive to the Quest, that it should never come to like I actually believe there should be exclusives, and people hate me for this. Like most people are like, no, exclusives are like there should never be exclusives anywhere. Every game should be playable everywhere. There should be no such thing as exclusives. But like I come from the generation of like Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, PlayStation, Dreamcast,
Yep.
and like all those different systems, they had specific games for those systems that was like the personality of the system. Like think about Sony as a platform. Final Fantasy, like the certain games like Ace
Yep.
Combat, that's PlayStation, man. That's the personality, that's the flavor, right? And so I thought with the Quest is a console. As far as I'm concerned, the Quest is like a Nintendo Switch. It's a console. You can go to Costco, you can go to Walmart, you buy a Quest, you bring it home. There's nothing else to buy. It's all in one. It's like a little video game console. And shouldn't a video game console have some exclusive content so like maybe you could make a PCVR gamer jealous a little bit? You know, if the only place they can get Vader Immortal is on the Quest, and they like, oh, I really want to play Vader Immortal, or I really want to play Journey of the Gods, or I really want to play Face Your Fears 2. But if you put all these games across both of them, you give like a hardcore PCVR guy has no incentive to really pick up a Quest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely 100% understand your position. I think originally when the Quest launched, VR still had and still does have growing pains, and you didn't want to segregate the market that early. Like, I think that's one of the major issues, and that's why I wasn't really big on exclusives, and I'm still not, because it's like, listen, someone invested $1,000 into a VR experience, and then someone's gonna actively, because it's not like, okay, here's my issue with the exclusive nature. It's not like the game doesn't run on this hardware. When it came to consoles, historically they were very different. These days they're much more similar, but historically they were completely different hardware. And to make the change from a PlayStation 2 to an Xbox game was a ton of work. It was just, it's like completely different, apples to oranges. Now everything has very similar hardware, and we see that these games can run without issue with a third-party application like Revive. So someone is actively preventing them from working on other hardware, and that's where I kind of have an issue. I'm like, well, Facebook, open up the store and let index owners buy games that are exclusive there. Just only sell them on that store. Have an exclusive store, because the hardware is compatible. We know the hardware is compatible. But then again, when you say Quest, yes, it's different hardware, things change. But most of these games are ports from PCVR. So that's where, like, I'm not 100% like, yes, we should have these exclusives.
Plasma Cube is like, exclusives are cancer. That's a good one. So I think I finally fixed my camera, guys. I was trying to switch it to my crappy camera to see if I could if I could at least get my crappy camera on here, but my crappy camera is in Skype. But anyways, it seemed, oh no, now it's screwing up again. Oh well. I mean, come on, man. We were talking about technical difficulties before the podcast started, and this is what happens. But yeah. So let's see. Where do we want to go from here? I know we got to wrap this up pretty soon. Well, what do you think about? Oh, I know what. Let me ask you. There's a question that I ask a lot of people whenever I have a guest on this show. One of the questions I like to go to is like future tech for VR, and like what could be. Well, I got two different questions that I like to ask every guest that comes on the show. One question is, has VR hardware hit a baseline? Okay, and what I mean by this is like a lot of people will be like some people believe VR still has like a hardware problem. Like the hardware for VR is not at a baseline level yet where it can get mass adoption from average Joe Blows. Like the resolution isn't good enough, maybe the field of view isn't wide enough, they're still too heavy, or whatever the case may be, right? And then other people will say, no, VR's hit a baseline. The headsets are decent enough. Now it's about software. It's these kinds of things that are an issue. So what do you think? Like, in your opinion, do you believe that VR hardware is at an acceptable baseline? Kind of think of it like this. Like, do you remember the days of Atari and Intellivision, and we got to the Nintendo Entertainment System? And it was kind of like the Nintendo Entertainment System was like this new baseline where it's like, okay, now we've got a decent level. Now we're at Nintendo Entertainment System. It's way better than Atari and all that. Are we there yet with VR? Do you think we've hit like this kind of a decent level?
So I definitely think we're there with VR. We've got rid of the screen door effect issues that that really plagued people in the beginning. Um, Most hardware can run the one or two panels at the 90 hertz that's needed. So like PCVR hardware and even the mobile hardware, like on the Quest 2, is caught up to a point where we can produce a very good experience and get it down to a price like the Quest 2, $300, which makes it a mainstream product. I don't think the overall hardware needs to improve much more. If you go with 4K or 8K panels, well, then you don't have the hardware to drive them. And then again, I don't think you necessarily need that much. I feel like the clarity is there. Clarity is there, refresh rate's there, sub-pixel array. I think we've nailed it on those. Most of the modern lenses are pretty nice, not giving off lots of or glare. So I think we're there hardware wise. And yes, we just right now we just need to have like a really nice level of new software titles.
Okay, so and then the next question is more about like let's dream a little dream about like high end VR, like the future of VR. I have this thing. It'll take a few seconds to show up on your screen probably, but next gen VR. What's the key feature? And so there's all these different possibilities. You've got resolution. We're kind of seeing some higher resolutions, like Quest 2 is a higher resolution now. And then we got like the HP Reverb is 2160 by 2160. So we're seeing some higher resolutions. Field of view, like some people want to go to 220 degrees and stuff like that. Comfort, weight. There could be an argument that even though you feel like things are pretty good, like the comfort and weight hasn't really reached a tipping point yet. Eye tracking, dynamic foveated rendering. Some people are really excited for that. Wireless, of course, is a big deal. Full body tracking. This is something I've always harped on because we're not in the game yet. Like a lot of people say, VR, man, you're in the game. No, we're not really in the game because I make this argument. When you see a science fiction movie where they talk about like stepping through a portal, like Stargate or something, like they step through the blue water and they're in like a new world, right? What is the first thing anybody does when they get into a new world? They're like, oh, they're looking at their body and their arm and everything. They're like, I'm in a new world. And our bodies aren't really in VR yet. Next gen AR pass through. This is something I've kind of argued about too, where I believe, like, if you think about Magic Leap, you think about HoloLens 2 and all these AR headsets, there's no reason really why when we buy like a Quest 3, we should also basically be getting a Magic Leap or a HoloLens 2 thrown in for free. We should have some next-gen AR pass-through happening in a much bigger way, I think. Built-in 5G modem, that might be a little more future-facing there. Facial tracking, advanced avatars. Like the Facebook avatars are bonkers. Like if we ever get to that level, that'll be incredible. Then of course, varifocal lenses, that might have been like a bad direction. Like that might have been a misstep on Oculus's part, thinking that that's such a big deal because you're talking about moving parts and stuff and those things can break. And then another thing that I think is really incredible and incredibly underrated is play space reskinning understanding. So scene recognition and understanding. I don't know if you remember when Qualcomm had their they have like
Yep,
this
I know exactly
prototype.
what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and like Vanishing Realms in your house, man. You're running up the stairs, you're in Vanishing Realms. You know, the little kid that jumps onto his bed
Yep.
and his bed is in Vanishing Realms. Well, Facebook has a thing called Live Maps, which, you know, they don't have it on any of their headsets yet, but they're working on it. And that could be a game changer like none other. Because imagine your room back there, like all those chairs could turn into chairs on a spaceship or something. You know what I mean? And so then they can like start bringing your physical world into the VR experience, and you could be walking around your house. Imagine if you played a VR game, like behind you there, you've got stairs that lead up. Imagine if you're in a VR game where you're like going upstairs, but the stairs are in this like, I don't know, like some futuristic Blade Runner world, but it like has the physical world there as well. So there's all these different things, and we want all of these things, right? We would love to have like 8 or 9 of these things in our next headset. But what if we could only have one? Like, what if it was like a min max thing, and like you could pick one of these things and just pump it up like never before? Like resolution could be through the freaking clouds, or field of view could be 220 degrees, or comfort, it could be like a damn near feather on your head. Like, which one of these would you, if you were at the boardroom for Oculus or for HTC or for what, or Apple or any company that's going to make a VR headset, and it's like, what is the key feature for next gen VR? Which one would you choose out of this list?
I have so all right. There's a lot to unpack there. I could comment on all of it, but your question is a really deep one because that's really tough. I mean, VR is all about immersion. So my head goes to, well, what's gonna create the the next level of immersion? And my first instinct would be like, oh, to make a mainstream, like B haptics, make B haptics mainstream. But then that goes back to what we said about just the friction of getting in. Well, you're gonna play a game, and every time you're gonna play a game, you're gonna zip on a vest and pair it to your device. And no, you've just added this extra headache that some people, even if it ups the immersion to a 12, they're not going to do it. Or the added price associated with it is the price versus benefit there. So the technology that I think makes the most sense and has the largest overall impact is eye tracking, because eye tracking and face tracking, because you get that extra level of immersion in games. When you're playing social games, people will see your facial features. Facebook is doing some really crazy stuff in that regard. And then there's also there's a huge aspect for performance boosting. So, like was on your list, which is dynamic foveated rendering.
Yeah.
Um, so like if you can, you really bump up the clarity in that spot that you're looking at, and then decrease the clarity everywhere else, which you won't notice in game as you're playing. You could get these games to look a million times better and not need better hardware. So I mean, that's probably what we're going to start seeing in next gen headsets, and probably the best product or the best new technology they can introduce. As far as everything on the list, just to blast them out real fast, I think resolution is where we need it to be. An improvement is nice, but not necessary. Refresh rate, I kind of like get stuck on refresh rate a little bit. You could see that the Oculus Quest 72 is a working refresh rate. The game, but see, my difference is when I play an Oculus Quest game versus an Index game on 120 or 144 hertz, goes back to what you said. You want to step in and it feels real. Well, 72 hertz never feels real to me. It always feels like I'm sitting back and playing a game. But when I put my Index on with a high-end PC pushing it, it feels real. You feel transported. So I feel like, maybe 90 should be a minimum. 120 would be great. I don't think we really need to go much higher than that, but who knows? Maybe one day I'll play a 240 hertz headset and be blown away. So wireless, I think, is a big step that really needs to happen for PCVR. Because if I could have anything on my Index right now on your list, it would be a perfect wireless solution. Because the tether is the only thing about my Index that bothers me. Literally the only thing. I know we talked about black levels and everything, but for me, it's perfect, except the cables occasionally in some games super annoying. 5G, I'm skeptical about because I am someone who's very susceptible to latency. So even virtual desktop sometimes doesn't feel great to me. I know you could get it down to like 20 milliseconds, which is completely like definitely playable, and even at 20 milliseconds might feel indistinguishable from using like the link cable. But anything over, I start to feel it, and it's, I don't know. For me, it bothers me. So when you're go to 5G, latency is based on distance, and you're just, you just have so much more distance to cover. You're going to get more latency. There's no way around it. So I think that I blasted through the list. So I'm skeptical on 5G, but I think it could be a cool option.
Yeah, the one thing, did I already mention this though on the dynamic foveated rendering? Like, did you hear John Carmack when he did his like long talk recently, and then also there was like a little after talk that was like on Oculus venues. I don't know if you heard either. Like very
I didn't
recently.
see the after talk.
Okay, in one of the talks, I don't remember which one it was, but he mentioned dynamic foveated rendering, and one of the things that he mentioned is that in theory it sounds like super amazing, but like in actual practice, like according to what they've seen so far, it doesn't really do what they really want it to do, or it might have enough of a hitch to it that it's like kind of noticeable for people. I don't know. I basically what I'm trying to say is like prove it to me about like
Yeah.
dynamic foveated rendering sounds wonderful, but I want to see it actually really work.
Well, so I can definitely see that being an issue because your eyes dot around so fast. So you have to have, again, we go back to latency. So it's going to be tracking your eyes. And if it doesn't render the increased resolution exactly where your eye is looking immediately, you're going to see moments of pixelation. And yes, that might be atrocious and ruin the experience. But on the PC side, you kind of have the opposite where it can, always start with a baseline, fairly high resolution, and just increase where you're looking, which doesn't even have to be with, it's used already now, but doesn't even have to be in terms of eye tracking. Just increase the clarity in the center and do a base resolution on the outskirts. So you could have it like in both directions. Make something that looks good look that much better, or help the performance on something that's struggling. I think it'll be harder on the performance end, might be harder, but like because of what I said, because of the delay. But I don't know. I feel like it's possible. I've seen some examples from Pimax, but again, until I experience it in these reviews and whatever, yes, I remain skeptical.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I look. I know I've taken a lot of your time today, and again, apologies to everybody in chat with the technical difficulties I've been having on my camera here. But I was wondering if maybe I could squeeze in one last question before we bounce out of here, and that is, you are in the 3090 club, man. NVIDIA 3090. So, do you have that thing installed, and have you been trying any like high-end VR games? Have you noticed anything? What's your thoughts?
Okay, so I'm in the 3090 club. Disclaimer on this: I buy ridiculous technology so I can tell you guys about it so you don't have to make stupid mistakes like me. Not to say the 3090 is a mistake. It's just like, I'm testing something to be like, hey, listen, this is why you don't need it. Like I told a lot of people who have a Quest 1 and are disappointed because everyone's getting a Quest 2 and they don't have one. Listen, it's not a $300 upgrade. You don't really need it. And I also get some, I have a technological reimbursement through my company, so I can spend some technology money and not really care about how much it costs. Otherwise, I would never recommend making a ridiculous purchase like that. That being said, the 3090 is a beast, but when it comes to VR, um, it's not as impressive as you would expect it to be because there's a lot of nuances to VR that will cause performance hitches. Like I was talking to Thrill Seeker about this. He likes to play a ton of VR chat, and he's like, "Oh, when frames dip in VR chat, it doesn't matter. You have a 3090 because he's rocking one too." He's like, "It doesn't matter. You're getting that massive dip. Your performance still stinks." But from my testing, synthetics, this thing is a beast and it's insane. You take it in practical use in VR. I like to run my index at 120 hertz. It's better for recording than 144. So I run it at 120. Then I check the performance over time. And like the majority of games with settings turned all the way up are staying at 120 the majority of the time. Are you still getting dips? Yes. Are they as big as my 2080 Ti? No. But there's still like most games don't stay at 120 frames per second 100% of the time. Might be CPU usage in games like Boneworks and Blades and Sorcery, even though I have a 9900K. So like VR, just the technology and the software behind it, the optimization, I guess, is not there. That even when you're throwing an excessive amount of horsepower at it, that you get this unbelievable experience that no one else will ever get. So if you're on your 2080s, your 2080 Ti's, your 3080s, you're fine. No one needs a 3090.
And if you're slumming it like me with the 1080 Ti, no.
No, 1080 Ti is, I'm actually giving one away. I don't mean to plug it, but I'm actually giving one away because I obviously upgraded my video card. I moved my 2080 Ti to my other machine that I use on a motion simulation. I have a US setup. Um, so I took my 1080 Ti and I put that in a giveaway that's up right now. But the 1080 Ti will run anything. I mean, I say like, listen, if you have a 1080 Ti, you're good. Are you going to run everything max settings? Absolutely not. But if you're running things on 90 hertz, you're not going to run into many issues with many games.
Yeah. You know, as a YouTuber, like wouldn't you also, for example, so you do YouTube and you have you get some revenues from YouTube. I don't know if you have a Patreon or anything like that, but wouldn't you also be able to like say the 3090 like cuz I've gotten like when I got my Valve Index, I do some other stuff like I have this website and stuff, but I basically like wrote that off. I mean, it doesn't like when people say they write something off, it doesn't mean it's free. It just lowers your
Yeah.
tax, you know, it lowers like what you're going to be taxed at. Like that part is written off. You still pay for the damn thing. But as a YouTuber, I would think like if you're a YouTuber, you're earning some money on YouTube, like the 3090 helps your YouTube, like that's part of your gig, you know, you're reporting on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is one thing because we're going to have to pay tax on our YouTube money. It's not like I'm making a ton of money here. I'm fairly new to this. I'm a year and a couple months in, not even a year and a half. So I'm fairly new to this. Uh, my channel makes some money. I can't say it makes nothing, but it makes some money. Does it come close to letting me purchase a 3090?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. But it makes some money, but I always tell everybody I'm just taking that money and throwing it back into the channel somewhere. So it's really not, yeah, the channel's not at all for profit. And I definitely, and when it comes to time and products I buy, like extra headsets, the channel is definitely in the negative. The amount of time YouTube can take up, and the cost of an index or a Quest. I don't really want to get into that conversation too much, but I didn't get my Quest 2 for free,
Oh, damn, we should
so
have got into that. That would have been fun. Cuz I think I'm
I.
blacklisted as well actually.
I mean, I don't have to run, so if you want to get into that, I'd love to hear your topic on that. Well, your take on that. But yeah, if you got to run, it's good. I got more time.
You know, I don't have to run, but I mean, where do we go with that exactly? But yeah, it does seem like I mean, are you a little bit bothered by the fact that there are these like preferred YouTubers that seem to like have an inside lane into Oculus and on one hand you'd be like, okay, well if these are the biggest YouTubers and they just simply have like giant subscriber numbers, you know, it's like get better, man. Get better. Have higher subscriber numbers and you'll be in the club. But then some people will say, well, I don't know, there's some people that are in the club and their numbers aren't like it almost seems like it's almost like the good boys club, you know, and it's like you got to have that in, and if you don't know the right person, you're not in. Or are we just like, is it just sour grapes on our part? I mean, what do you think about that?
So, I mean, I went into detail. I spent about 5 minutes on this on my Quest 2 review. It was a brutally honest Quest 2 review, which I told my side of it, and I have to say, like, 99% of everybody was super positive. They're like, listen, don't worry if you're blacklisted from Facebook. We appreciate you not taking money. Because just to give this scenario really quick, um, I unlike, well, let's start here as you know from my YouTuber awards, I know a lot of the our fellow YouTubers. From super popular to little guys like myself. I talk to them almost on a daily basis, and they're all amazing people. I'm not accusing anyone of being a shill. Anyone who's doing paid promotional work, it should have the little pop up in the corner that says paid promotion. And so I don't think anyone's lying to you either. I don't think anyone's like taking a product and be like, this is the best headset ever. Oh my God, I'm amazed. Blah, 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 because they're taking a paycheck. I don't think that's the scenario. Maybe there's some out there, but that's not the case. When it comes to sour grapes, like you said, there were people who had like 1,000 subs or 1,200 or who are not very popular who were sent Quest 2 from Facebook. So I don't think it's a popularity contest. So that people say, well, get better, it's your own fault. That's not the case, because I will not name names, but there are people up there with the 50,000 subs and higher who were denied. Okay, and when I say denied, they were just ignored. And is there the possibility that our messages went to a spam folder? It's I want to say no, because in many cases, these are people I've spoken to in the past. So to have some type of dialogue back and forth to someone who's previously responded to you, and then all of a sudden they won't answer anything, that's
Hey, can
suspect.
I ask a quick
Now,
question? This person
yeah,
that you're emailing, by any chance, would their last name start with an L? A female. A
uh,
female.
maybe.
Okay, because here's one thing I've noticed, and look, I mean, this is kind of, we're getting into the weeds here, but it's like,
Yep.
I think if you're a professional company, like, shouldn't you have the courtesy to like email somebody back and just be like you should just have a standard email that, like, even if it's just like an email form and you just throw VR365 in the little spot or whatever, but just say, hey, we really like what you're doing in VR, but at this time we don't have any free stuff to give away. We have a limited number of people that we give free stuff, and there's no real rhyme or reason. And
Yep.
like, there should be some letter that, like, there should be some acknowledgement that you reached out to this person, like, acknowledge you just as a human being. And for me,
Yep.
I've emailed, there's somebody in Oculus. I mean, I don't know if they're still the person now, but there was somebody that was like the go between, like, if you're a YouTuber, this is who you contact if you're in the USA, right? And I emailed this person, I don't know how many times, never got a response back ever. One time I accidentally got a response back when they thought I was someone else, and they responded back. And it's just like, I don't know. I mean, look, I know I'm a tiny little YouTuber, like 3,000 subs, nothing, right? So like, I don't register in their radar, but like, have some common decency here, you know?
Yeah. So, I'm going to try and stay on point because you brought up a lot of great topics early on. But yes, I completely agree with what you said. I know I'm long-winded, so I'm going to try and belt it out fast. But um, yes, it would be nice if they responded. I understand if someone doesn't. I understand how busy I get with the amount of emails I receive regarding YouTube and stuff, so it's hard to keep up with. And I'm sure I snub people, every once in a while, and I feel bad about that. This doesn't feel like that because of it's happened to me and multiple other people. I know also I kind of have a track record with Facebook. I know I definitely pissed somebody off with the release of Onward. At least I feel that way. Even though I was talking back and forth with CodeSync, but when Onward released on Oculus Quest, it locked up my Oculus Quest and I had the factory reset. The Quest came back online, but was a mess. My menu was screwed up. My hand tracking wouldn't work. I let the battery die. I restarted it multiple times. The thing just would not work right, and I had the factory reset, and I was pissed. And I also had a long list of other people who said yes. I don't know if they're just jumping on the bandwagon and said, yeah, I'm hard locking too, but I had 85 people say that they were hard locking also, and three other people said they had the factory reset. So I made a video about this, which someone took my thumbnail, which I will agree was over the top. It was like an Oculus Quest with like the front like ripped
Oh
open.
yeah.
Um, and someone took that, put it on Facebook and Reddit, and said, "Don't buy Onward; it will brick your Oculus Quest," which is something I never said. But again, I tried my best to clarify and spoke to I answered every single comment. But I can understand where this gets a little gray and upset some people. Um, but I think, and I reached out to CodeSync originally. I said, hey, this happened to me, and it happened to my buddy, another fellow YouTuber. We hard locked, and our quests are not working right after this. His came back on after his battery fully drained and restarted. But he did restart it a few times in between. It was still not working right. But after a full drain, his worked. Mine was just wonked. So I don't know. It was a really weird scenario, but like I said, everything breaks around me. So I understand I could have pissed them off there. I'm also very adamant talking against Facebook's the privacy concerns with Facebook. I think laws should be in place to prevent them from doing certain things, and I'm sure they're not happy about that. So it's possible I got on their radar, but it's also possible that all of my messages have gone to spam suddenly, even though they used to get through, and that they don't know who I am. That's also a possibility. I don't think that's a possibility. So I think they're on their radar. When I try to work with them directly and say, listen, I want a Quest 2, I want to show it to my audience knows I speak the truth. They know I'm going to tell it like it is. I've had, like, I know HTC doesn't like me too much anymore because of my experience with the Cosmos. I kind of ripped it apart the day it was delivered, and I was really pissed because it gave me a big headache. But um, so anyway, I might have, burnt a bridge with them because I pissed them off by doing what I think is just speaking open and honestly. So the only person that would respond to me was a what's called a publishing agency or a publishing company that works with Oculus, and they were like, "Yeah, no, we'll send you one right away, and we'll send you all these games, and we'll do this." Um, but it's a paid
That's
deal,
weird.
and here are
It's
the
weird though how this third party company was going to get you a Quest 2 before it was available. Like, how do they get them? Where are they
yep.
getting them? I mean,
Well,
they're
they
obviously
they
getting
work
them.
with they work for Facebook.
Okay, that's weird.
So they work for Facebook, and I would have had it. I would have had it when like all the big guys had it. I would have had it for Facebook Connect. So that's when I would have had it. But it was a paid deal, and I was just like, no, 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 I don't want to do a paid deal. Don't pay me. Just send it to me. I'll even send it back. Like, if that's the case, I just want the opportunity. And they're like, no, we can't do that. And I'm like, well, can you get me in touch with someone at Facebook? We'll send you their contact, and hopefully they'll reach out to you. And nope. And I tried. I really pushed. I said, listen, I don't want a paid deal. I can't go into the
Yeah, yeah.
specifics of
It's
the
okay.
deal.
No biggie.
Yeah, I can't go into, but just think about it. I would have got money in my pocket, a Quest, free games, but I had a list of do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
And I was just like, absolutely, there's no chance I'm doing that. I cannot say. And this went on till, like, right up until when Quest was available retail. This went back and forth, and because I was getting so upset, I'm watching people do Quest content where they're just like, hey, look, it's a Quest. I got one, and that's 20,000 views. And I was like, like dying on the inside because I want to be in on that action. And I'm definitely jealous. I'm not going to lie, but I also want that experience. So that hurt a lot. But again, I was not willing to, just like drop my integrity and say, yeah, oh, I'm going to take out this Quest and do exactly what you want for the, some cash and say how amazing it is. I'm not going to do that because if I find an issue, I'm going to say this is an issue.
What do you think?
Like the
Yeah. What do you think also about like just getting games for free and stuff? Because honestly, like, I believe that anytime you get anything for free, it could be $10, it could be $5. Like, if I get a game, like somebody sends me a game, right, in my email, like I'm opening up my email and it's like, yeah, here's a key for In Death Unchained on the Quest or whatever. So I'm getting the free game. Now I'm doing tons of, like, I'm doing YouTube work. I got this VR game rankings thing. I'm doing that as well. So I feel like I'm not being a bad person for getting a free game here. But at the same time, I also believe on a subconscious level, like this isn't even conscious, there's a slight bias. It's like when like gaming science teacher mentioned in chat, she says, I don't think Facebook is paying anyone. Sending headsets or covering travel costs to Oculus Connect, yes, and that's always disclosed. But I kind of have this thing like, look, if Oculus flew me to Boston for, like, when they had Oculus Connect in Boston or whatever, or it's like PAX East or whatever it was, if Oculus flew me to Boston, like, yeah, technically they didn't, like, they're just giving me travel there, but like subconsciously, man, it's like Oculus is like hooking me up. You know what I mean? And then even getting free games, I think it affects everything. But then the catch 22 is, look, we can't be individual YouTubers buying every single little game with
Yep.
our own
Yep.
money. We'll go bankrupt like a mofo.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with you, and I actually think it goes beyond just like subconscious. I do feel like yes, if you receive something for free, you didn't have to buy into it. You might like it a little bit more, just because you're not balancing it against the $30 price tag or something. You're just balancing it. So it's like, yeah, I got this experience. I enjoyed the experience. You're not saying, wow, was this experience worth $30? And I do feel like yes, that's a subconscious that does occur. And I try to not do strict reviews anymore. Like I will make a list of like all my favorite games and kind of rank them, and then you're just getting my opinion, and that opinion would be the same if I paid for the game or not. And that's what I try and aim for now. But what you said about like sending you to Boston or sending you somewhere else, I that goes way further. And that your original statement that you said, like, oh, what if Facebook only has this list of pre-approved YouTubers that they will work with? And yes, I'm really scared about them, and I'll tell you how these two topics kind of combined. So obviously it's a boon to your channel if you get a product early and you're able to cover it before anyone else. So what happens is Facebook sends you this product early, your channel does great, your channel grows, you're more popular, and you're happy because of that. And you don't want to do anything bad to piss off Facebook because you might kill that relationship in the future. So even if you're not doing anything immoral or unethical, or it just you're only saying your true opinion, you're more likely to be like, oh, you want me to mention 50% more pixels, and you want me to mention how it's this much lighter or whatever. Sure, I can do that. That's the least I can do for you sending me a free headset. Absolutely. So then you just have this pre-approved, people who play by the book set of content out there. And I'm not saying the community as it is now is guilty of that. I respect this YouTube community. I think they're all amazing. Honestly, I think they're all really good people. But you have the potential to run in that scenario. So dissenting voices like myself and some other channels that I know kind of got snubbed will just not exist, and they'll also be blunted from growing because they're not getting these new products. And it's just a great way for Facebook to drown us out. So yeah, I'm really really scared of that happening. And again, like if you're sent to Facebook Connect, that's an amazing opportunity on so many levels. So you're going to be less inclined to do anything that pisses somebody off.
Yeah, well, getting headsets early, that really is, because it's like if everybody got their headsets on the same day, like you might have had to drive out to a Best Buy and you bought it with hard-earned money. The other guy got it free, it was sent by Facebook. But at least it's on the same day. You're on this even playing field. But like when
Yeah.
people get like a Quest 2 a month early, how the F are you competing against that? Because the regular viewers, they don't care about all this shit. They just
Yeah.
know that this guy has an actual Quest. This guy knows what the hell,
Yeah.
it's actually there. They see it, you know?
And when I'm going to do a Quest review a month later and you've already watched 15 other bigger channels,
Yeah.
who gives a crap about my review? And that's why I made my review a lot more focused on like, well, let's compare it to a Quest 1. Should you buy it? Who should buy it? Overall, how good is this headset? And obviously, I went into my scenario. I discussed my scenario, how I could have had one early, but I refused it because it came with strings. Um, and there's the elephant in the room, which is Facebook in general. So that's what I focused mine on because I feel like it's a different take, and it was my only way to really compete with what's already out there. What's the point of watching my video? Yes, I know some people respect my opinion, but you've already watched 10 opinions. You need the 11th.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and there's a reason why there's embargoes. Like some people get pissed, like, oh, why do I have to wait till 1 p.m. to release my game review? Or video cards. Video cards are always under embargo. Gamers Nexus and Linus and all these people start releasing Jay's 2 cents. So start releasing their information at the same time. So there's a reason these embargoes exist so that no one has like this really unfair advantage.
Yeah, video cards, that's a whole nother ball of wax, like doing like frame
Mm.
rate comparisons and all this. Like, it's hard to trust that stuff when you know these guys got sent like a $1,500 card early that you don't know if they even have to send it back when they're done or whatever. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's too bad we can't just have a regular world where, I mean, things have gotten slimy, you know, behind the scenes. Like in the olden days, everybody just bought a Super Nintendo cartridge and that was that, you know. There wasn't a lot of
Yeah.
this stuff going on. But Matteo, man, thanks so much. I truly appreciate you for coming on this channel. I did want to highlight, you know, everybody out there. I'm sure the vast majority of my viewers are probably already subscribed to your channel, but very impressive channel. Like I said, I don't watch a ton of this YouTube stuff myself personally, not because I'm like elitist or something. It's just a matter of time. But in preparing for this episode, I checked out your channel. I was looking at some of your more recent videos, and you know what, dude? I'm honestly impressed with all the work that you've done. I like the production value. I like the honesty, the down-to-earth nature that you have. Like, I am a new fan of your stuff, man. Like, I really respect what you're doing out there, and I'm glad that you're having a lot of success now. Or, I mean, success is starting to show up for you. Because I remember seeing on, like, the Vive subreddit and the Oculus subreddit, like, these videos from Matteo, you know, like the top 10 this, top 10 that, or whatever, and like I'm like, man, this Matteo311 guy is really banging hard. And maybe in the early days, like, you weren't seeing much of a return on that, and you might have gotten a little bit discouraged and stuff, but it's paid dividends, you know, eventually, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, YouTube has its ups and downs. I do want to just like kind of thank you, one, for having me on, but two, when I started YouTube, you were one of the channels that I was watching. Like I said, games were sparse. There was nothing out there. There were very few YouTubers, and you know, I would always constantly come across your channel and the podcast you used to be on. And you know, I was watching that just like I need any information. Give me new information. And when I started making videos was because I started making videos that I would search for. That's what I started. I was always like, well, what new games are out there? Well, what are the best games? And so I started making videos that I was always searching for. And the channel's kind of, you know, it's changed over time, but I'm really happy with the content I'm putting out.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of nice, short, quick, tight videos. I should probably do that more myself. I do too many of these long, epically long videos. But yeah, no, it's great stuff, and it's honest, it's legit, and it's kind of like from a regular person. You can trust this person. They're not like you're not trying to be ridiculously funny or cool or anything. You know, you're just being natural and normal, and I think it really pays off in the end. So yeah, thanks so much again for coming on the show. I definitely appreciate it.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Alrighty, guys. Well, I guess we're going to go ahead and sign off. Again, apologies, all the crazy technical difficulties. I definitely got some camera problems I got to figure out here after I get off. And but be sure to go to Matteo's channels. Check out the first annual VR YouTuber Awards. I actually make an appearance in there for a quick second. That was super cool. I was so glad my boy Gamertag won that award, though, because you want to talk about
GT's the
the
man.
hardest working mofo in the business. Every time I turn around, Gamertag is streaming this, doing that, I don't know when the guy sleeps, man. It used to be Paradise Decay was the guy that did all that. Now it's Gamertag. So a really cool VR YouTuber awards. Absolutely. I'm seeing 2.2K views. This should have like 10K views already. So definitely people go check that out and link to it and tell other people about it. I think it was really cool, really well done, and awesome. But
All
yeah.
right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. I'll be back, of course, sometime in the future. So check the channel. More content's coming. And that's basically going to go ahead and wrap it up for this particular episode of VR365. We'll see everybody next time. Take it easy. Later.